Today we're taking a look at from Barrell Craft Spirits, batch number 34. How's this one gonna pan out versus some prior batches? Only one way to find out. Let's take a look at that today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. Let's do this. Hey guys, as always, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Greatly appreciate it. So like I said, we're taking a look at from Barrell Craft Spirits. Today we're taking a look at batch 34 specifically. As I kind of sat down with this thing, I really kind of got into it, and I'm hoping that kind of translates today for you guys in today's review. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this batch. So first and foremost, so what again is batch 34? So batch 34 has a total bottle count of 30,649, comes in at 114.62 proof. It is a blend of 3 mash bills from Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. It is age stated as 6 years, but it's blends of 6, 8, 10, and 15-year-old bourbon, and comes in at right around $85. So it's gonna be interesting. We'll kind of dive into that. We'll kind of give you guys my perspective on things. But first, let's take a look at the color. So as you can see, kind of a really nice, light mahogany, kind of a rich kind of copper. Move the whiskey around in the glass a little bit. Pretty decent legs on that. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the nose. Boy, so for me, right off the bat, there's this like Cracker Jacks note. Really nice caramel, like there's this saltiness to it, slight nuttiness. Beautiful oak notes. It smells so far older on the nose, like a little bit more of that older whiskey is kind of coming through. Again, really nice baking spices, much more of that cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe even a hint of like a clove. Yeah, really rich notes so far that's giving you the impression of it having those older whiskeys in it. It smells pretty rich and complex so far. Really nice brown sugars on that. Almost like a slight hint or a touch of like a molasses. There's that richness that just kind of keeps lingering there. Some of those kind of dark, rich, kind of more darker fruits are kind of starting to come through. A little bit of that orange zest coming through on it as well. Little hint of like a powdered chocolate note. More of that orange starting to show up. Even a little hint of mint that's there as well. Again, more of the baking spices there on the end. A little more black pepper coming out. Definitely some of that salted caramel, like more of a Cracker Jack, something along those lines. A little bit of like a leather, maybe tobacco. A lot going on with this batch so far. And again, my thoughts are that some of those older whiskeys within this blend are starting to kind of take over a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see what the palate kind of shows. So let's dive into that right now. Cheers. Boy, so right off the bat, very creamy on the palate. Nice kind of like almost like a butterscotch, fresh caramel notes. Sweet, rich oak for sure. Those nice brown sugars are starting to show up. Almost like a brown butter. There's just this richness that it has to it so far on the palate. Again, very creamy, little bit of a black pepper note on that. More of that orange zest kind of coming through like it was on the nose. Touch of dryness from that oak kind of starting to show up a little bit on the palate. It really hits for me on the front to the mid palate. I don't think the finish is overly long. The baking spice remains, which is nice to kind of help influence the finish, but I don't think it's overly long. But again, still that creamy mouthfeel, nice texture to it overall. But there's something there that's slightly different, or this, I hate to say bitter note, but there's a little hint of a bitterness on there. I don't know if that's more of like the baker's chocolate that's kind of coming out in that a little bit. But there's a little bit of that dryness, a little bit of a slight mineral note, but nothing that's off-putting by any means. For me, it's drinking a lot like an older whiskey would. I'm gonna say there's a little bit of that older, dusty kind of profile to it without it being overly done. I still think it remains very consistent. It's a well-balanced whiskey. And again, I know people get sometimes a little bit too crazy about the Tennessee whiskeys. I wouldn't worry about that at all one bit. I really don't think it's showing up that much to offset all of the other great factors that this whiskey has going for it. A caramel apple aspect to this thing. There's something about it that it just continues to like evolve. Maybe even a little bit there right at the end. Again, just like I was saying, that it evolving, a little bit of a dark fruit, maybe more of a cherry, maybe even a little bit of a tobacco or leather, so a cherry, maybe pipe tobacco, something along those lines. Now, I've had this bottle open now for upwards of a month, and I think from the first time I opened it to now, it has significantly improved. I'm very, very pleased with the direction this bourbon has gone. And I would say if anyone does have this or you see it, this is one of those whiskeys that I often kind of preach about, allowing for there to be a little bit of time spent with a whiskey. And this is a perfect example of that, is not judging a book by its cover, especially immediately. This is a really fine example of something that needed a little bit of time. And now that I've kind of gotten into this thing, allowed it to open up, it's really started to kind of hit its groove. And I'm really pleased with how this batch 34 has turned out. So my overall thoughts on this one would be, I think at $80, I think it's a pretty nice value considering the blends that it has in it. You know, anywhere from 6 to 15, it's got a lot going on. I think they've done a great job, again, of the blending, balancing this thing out perfectly. Again, that's what Barrell Craft Spirits are masters of. They're great blenders. They're great at putting and crafting these whiskeys. And again, I'm gonna say this is probably one of the better batches that I've had in a while. 33 was fantastic. This is slightly different, and one that I would say probably would be equally on the same level as batch 33. Really great bourbon overall. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, from Barrell Craft Spirits, this is their batch 34 bourbon whiskey. Something I think you definitely need to consider if you see it on the shelves. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Like I said in the video, make sure you allow a little bit of time in the bottle with this thing open. I think it will ultimately reward you, in the end, and you'll see that the bourbon that you're gonna be drinking will eventually get to that. Thank you guys for tuning in to another one of my videos. Greatly appreciate it and all the support. If you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel and or become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out the link and other links in the description below. A lot of good stuff down there as well. And remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.
Bring my energy back, girl, you're something like the sunlight. Girl, you're something like the sunshine. You got the touch, girl, you got the best. Sending dirty pics, ooh, what's next? We should link up, let me guess. Flying overseas, make us. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep it 100, keep it solid. It's a lone wolf, you know I'm wildin'.